Hi, I'm Eshkor, the world's greatest Canadian wizard, and you can tell I'm Canadian because who else would claim they were Canadian except a citizen? Come on now. Oh, imagine Mao Zedong saying, you can trust me because I'm Canadian. Ah. Instead, it's your old pal Eshkar, who never lies. And he's almost always right. So, I want to talk to you today about one of the world's great religions. This is another episode in Mything Persons. The world's great religion of Buddhism. And Buddhism is followed or practiced by 1 billion people worldwide, so it's an important thing. What do you do that gets read by 1 billion people? Same here, nothing. So the deal is, there was a guy back in the Gupta Empire in India. His name was Prince Gautama. And Prince Gautama lived a very sheltered life. I can't fault him for it, because he didn't know. But at any rate, if anyone had any power in that world of the times, it was Prince Gautama. He was going to be the next emperor of the Gupta Empire. The next emperor, yeah, I said it right. So, rule over millions of people. Have absolute control over the lives of millions. People would listen to his every word. People would do whatever he said. And it was important in those days. Because structure was difficult when infant mortality was so high. It was hard to hold a country together, because the people that were being born might not grow to adulthood. The people you were training might turn sick and die. So anyway, and this is outside of the story. I'm just giving you a little prep. But the story is that he went out for a ride with his charioteer, and the charioteer was actually one of the gods. And Prince Gautama said, "Hey, look over there. There's a guy with a bowl in front of him. The guy is skinny as a rail, dirty clothes. He's sitting there. What the hell? Why isn't he working his job? What's going on here?" And the charioteer, who was one of the gods, says, "Well, Prince, he's poor. Some people are poor, and they can't afford to buy nice clothes, and they can't afford to buy good food, and they may not have any food at all. And apparently there's nothing we can do about it, because there's poor everywhere in every time." The prince is like, "Ew. I'll drive on." So they drove down the road a little bit, and there was a guy, sick as a dog. He was barfing, and he was snotting, and he was miserable. And the prince was like, "Ew, what the hell, what's the story there, charioteer?" And the charioteer, who was one of the gods, he says, "Well, Prince, that man is sick. Now, in the palace, as soon as you get sick, whoosh, they whisk you off. You never see a sick person in the palace. It's important. Because even though they didn't have any medical science in those days, they didn't understand that if you isolate someone that's sick, it's less likely for the other people to get sick." So the prince said, "Well, or the charioteer said, well, that's a sick person, Prince. And sick people have been with us always. And there's no way to stop it." Well, Prince was upset. Now he's like, "What the? Wait, I have control. I can't just order this guy to be well. I can't order that guy to have money. I could give him money, but that'd be enfranchising, begging. So let's move on." So they passed up the poor guy, and they passed up the sick guy. And then they came upon a procession of people carrying a dead man. And the prince, who had never seen a dead man before, really, hadn't even seen sick people, he says, "All right, what's the deal here? The guy's not moving. He looks bad." And the charioteer, who is one of the gods, says, "Well, Prince, that's a dead person. People die. They die from poverty. They die from illness. They die from war. They just die. And it's been going on forever, and no one can make it stop." The prince was very upset. He went home that night and he thought about what he had seen, and he was very angry at himself and at the world. He was angry that he had been so cloistered that he didn't know the truth, that the people who had cloistered him, that had hidden him from the truth, meant well. This was a startling revelation for him. Thank you. He had a wife. He had children. He had grandchildren, because in those days a generation was 13 years long. Yeah, ask the Hebrews. You got your bar mitzvah, and she got the same thing at age 12, and they give you a sword and a sling and part of somebody's father's flock, and that was you. You're an adult now. And if they called you out to war, you went. So the army that was with Joshua when he fit the battle of Jericho and the walls coming tumbling down, they were 12 to 15 years old. People didn't live long in those days. You're an adult soon. And it's pretty easy to pull the wool over the eyes of a 12 to 15-year-old. No offense to you guys out there that are still struggling. Well, Gautama, Prince Gautama, was pretty angry that night. He didn't know what to do. And he thought about it, he thought about it, he thought about it. And you know what he thought? He thought, that's it. I'm ditching this place. I'm blowing this pop stand. So he put on a bunch of robes, got himself on a horse, and he rode out in the middle of nowhere. And eventually the horse ran out because he didn't know how to take care of a horse. You got grooms for that, stable hands for that. You just get on it and ride. Well, he got on that horse and rode until that horse couldn't go anymore. Then he got off the horse, started walking. And he got pretty thirsty. He got pretty hungry. And he wasn't feeling too good. And he thought, is this what it's like to be alive? So he came to a place where there was a mulberry tree. This is as the story goes. And he sat under that mulberry tree and he contemplated the universe. Why do people get poor? Why do people get sick? Why do people die? And a bunch of other questions. Why didn't my dad think it was important to tell me about that when he meant me to be an emperor? Why didn't my wife and kids tell me that? Now I understand that some of my grandkids, when they disappeared, they weren't going to other palaces. They grew sick. They died. Oh, that's unfair. I'm going to be the emperor. How could this happen on my watch? So it broke his brain, completely broke him, and he realized a few things that the rest of us don't realize. Ready? I mean, some of you guys out there that are extremely practical, you'll resonate with this. That's what make what happens all the funnier. So he said, well, it's evident that prayer doesn't work. Because I've been praying for those poor people to have money. I've been praying for the sick people to be cured. And I mean what I say. I'm the prince. I've been praying for those dead people to be brought back to life. And none of it's happening. And if anybody could have those things done, if anybody is closely connected to the gods, it's me. I am the head of the state religion. Like a pharaoh of Egypt. So he thought, well, you know, I guess that means there are no gods. And if there are no gods, there are no devils. And if there are no gods or devils, there's no heaven or hell. There's no eternal punishment. There's no eternal damnation. There's no eternal reward. All you have is today and the people around you. For you guys that are practical, you're nodding your heads, yeah. But for the rest of us who are spiritual, we're like, no, 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 no. So the place he sat down under his mulberry tree was a place that had people in it. And those people, like people anywhere, they poke things that they don't understand with a stick. And they love being entertained. Because entertainment was valuable in any age that didn't have radio or television or the internet. Nowadays it's cheap because there's bad entertainment everywhere. If you wanted good entertainment, you'd have to listen to my friend Wild Bill. See, there's a plug. So anyway, so he realized in his mind that there are no gods, there are no demons, there are no heavens, there are no hells. There is no eternal judgment, there is no eternal punishment, there is no eternal reward. And that all you have is yourself and the people around you. Better treat it right. And you only got one shot, and then you're dead forever. Boy, you know, he didn't like that. And he sat under that tree and figured, well, I guess I'll just starve to death here thinking, because I don't know how to feed myself. I never had to. So he just sat there and started starving. Well, the people in the area who were farmers and hunter-gatherers, whatever they were doing, I assume there was a village, they come out and they're like, who's the weird guy in the nice clothes? Oh. I poked him with a stick. He woke up. Oh, what? Like, oh, where do you come from? He goes, I was a prince of the great and mighty Gupta Empire. Like, huh? Look around, bud. There's no Gupta Empire here. There's no king. There's no emperor. Some of us never heard of that guy. The ones that have are like telling stories, and we're laughing because we think they're fake. Nobody could be like that. Nobody could be dressed in silks all day long and have people feed them lark's tongues and aspic. As pig, I think it is, yeah. So they were kind of like, you're a stranger, you're weird, and that's how people are. We don't like strangers, we don't like weirdness. And a few of us that do often get into trouble. it's just a thing. We are part of a defense mechanism of the community. And the community sees how the new thing is interacting with us, the fringe people. And if the thing is a nice interaction, well, then the community opens its arms. And if it's a bad interaction, the community closes its arms. I've been on both ends of that. I know about it better than most. So people says, well, what's your story? And he started telling about the palace and about the servants and about the food and about the drinks and about the women and about everything revolves around you there. And look at this and this story and that story. And I'm the priest of the national religion, so I know a lot about the national religion. I know a lot about Indra, and I know a lot about Vishnu, and I know a lot about Brahma, you know. So he would tell them these stories. They never heard this stuff before. They're like hicks in the hills, no radio, no television, no phone, no lights, no motor car. Not a single luxury except sex, which seems to be the one thing that we all as humans share, is either interest in or frustration with sex. So, and I thought, you know, this is pretty damn entertaining because we got nothing. We're just farming and, you know, living and dying. So they found that very entertaining. Thus, vaudeville was born. Guy up on stage talking, everybody's like, whoa! And they give them food because that keeps them alive. They know that. They're smart. They're wise in the ways of the world. Food equals survival unless you're sick or dead. Stuff that the prince hadn't known about, but these people lived with every day, accepted it every day. So these people, before he started telling them their stories, they had gods, they had goddesses, they had home gods and home goddesses and town gods and town goddesses and county gods and county goddesses and demons and threats and evil wizards sending bad dreams to you to break your will or make your cows give sour milk or, you know, that stuff. Make your crops stunt. So, make you grow tobacco. There's a joke. So anyway, they all had gods that they worshipped. They worshipped a god to make sure there was enough rain. They worshipped a god to make sure there wasn't too much rain. They worshipped a god to make sure that the sun rose in the morning and that the moon came up at night. They worshipped a god for childbirth. They worshipped a god to aid in childbirth. They worshipped a god to aid in achieving riches in the world. They, you know, all these things that they wanted, they attached to supernatural entities. And says, if you give enough stuff to the supernatural entity or tell them you're really serious, they will help you. But, as in all religions, you have to add a caveat. The gods are fickle. Because you may pray like crazy and still get sick. You may pray like crazy and still die. So, Prince Gautama says, then there are no gods, and there are no devils. There's nobody you can propitiate. There's no one that can intercede between yourself and the vicissitudes of life. And there's no eternal punishment and no eternal reward. And that these things are a waste of time, and you are making yourselves stupid, believing in bullshit, when you should be just working and meeting and greeting and being friendly and supportive and mating and having progeny, growing old and dying, so everybody learns all the rules as they live in your community. And that's what he said. Oh, those people were like, oh no, we got plenty of gods. Look, we got this god, that god, this god, that god. We got the harvest god, the moon god, the sun god, the desert god, the rain god, the ocean god, the river god. You know what I mean? The god of sharp tools. And I'm making these up as I go along, but if you look into the history, you'll find these gods there too. Almost every culture has them. The Romans called them hearth gods, and we call that paganism. You have hearth gods, little figures of gods and goddesses. You like drop some popcorn on her. You say, thank you that my stew tasted better today than it did yesterday, or whatever. Thank you, I had peas porridge instead of nothing, dirt. So, the people were like, there are no gods? Here's a guy that comes from the center of everything, that knows everything. And he's suddenly telling us, I discovered there were no gods. I discovered there were no demons. There were no wizards that are sending evil dreams to you. These are real things that happen to real people, and we're interpreting them badly. That was his message. That was Prince Gautama's message. Can you imagine? Look at Buddhism today. And that's the next point. So he gave this pure message, very easy to understand. For anybody that came upon it, all the practical men around him would say, yeah, I've been telling you this all along, right? What are you wasting your time for in this false stuff? And the impractical people saying the whole time, there must be something greater than this. Look how vast the universe is. There must be, there must be, there must be panspermia. There must be intelligent life out there. Simply because I cannot wrap my mind around the vastness of it all. Not because there's any reason for it. There's no model that shows that that would happen. So that's a belief in something you can't prove. That is religious. So the Buddha, he was called the Buddha later after death, but Prince Gautama said there is no such thing. Nothing like that. This is important you remember this because you may drift off, because we drift off. So while he was doing this, the people started putting away their hearth gods. They started trusting in the land. They started trusting in each other. They had better lives for it. They still got sick. They still had child mortality. They still died. But they felt better. You're all I got, buddy. We're all we got, buddy. Let's stick together. I know I hate you, but damn it, here's some food. Because if you're gone, I'll feel guilty that you went and I didn't help you. That's how that happened. So they put away their fake beliefs. They put away their fake gods. They put away their fake religious ceremonies. And while Prince Gautama lived, they felt like they were being entertained like, wow, like an all-night Blade movie marathon. They were like, wow, this is the coolest, wow. When we get done with work, let's bring some food over to this guy. And we'll like give him food. And he'll tell us stories that we would never hear otherwise. So entertaining, right? Like Rod Serling. Yeah. So, and his stories didn't have morals because he was still struggling to figure out why. Nobody has ever figured out why, except religion. And he was saying, there is no religion. Give it up. So the people did while he lived. And as soon as he died, when his body was being burned or sent down the Ganges, they were already uncovering all those hearth gods again, putting them back up on the hearth and calling it the childbirth Buddha and the sunlight Buddha and the river Buddha and this Buddha and that Buddha and Buddha, 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 Buddha. They went right back to who they had been the whole time. He wasn't going to change them. People are as they are, not as you want them to be. Not even as the law demands they be. Human nature is eternal. What is not eternal is the artifice of man. However, as soon as Prince Gautama was dead and they were calling him the Buddha, everybody had a Buddha for everything. Go to India now and look at a Buddhist temple. Gods and goddesses and demons and devils and stories about heavens and stories about hells and eternal reward, eternal punishment. Just like it was before he went and sat under that mulberry tree and taught what he thought was truth. And that's what happens to every great thought. It gets interfered with by human nature. Doesn't matter how brilliant your thinking is. Eventually, people will incorporate it into their very human lives in a way that will make you wish you hadn't even bothered. Like Prince Gautama. If he had come back after he died, if he had gone to an afterlife and the god in that afterlife says, well, you were the prince, we'll send you back so you get a look, like Scrooge. So he'd get a look and he'd see what they had done. He'd tear his hair out. He'd be like, all my work wasted. These people just were who they were the whole time. And everything I said was only entertainment. And they never really paid attention. They just wanted me to know that they were in my fan club while I was entertaining and fun to be with. And then when I died, they went right back to who they were. And the imprint that I'd put upon them is they called me the Buddha now. And they called all those old gods Buddhas too. It was like I had never lived. Like the waters of time had closed over my head. And people had gone back to being the way they had always been. This is the story of Buddhism. How about that? There are other great holy figures. Muhammad, Jesus. But they invariably run into the same problems that Prince Gautama did. Men are men. Men get sick. Men are poor. Men die. And nobody can change that. Fast forward 2,000 years, maybe 3,000, depending on whose dateline you believe. And today, we can do so much, and we still can't cure poverty. And we still can't cure death. And there are many diseases, conditions, that we can't address appropriately. 2,000, 3,000 years later, the world is the same as Prince Gautama saw it. And nobody really ever believed him. And they went right back to being the God-worshipping, devil-fearing people they had always been. And that, my friends, I hope you don't mind me spending so long at it, is a lesson in human nature, not the nature of the cosmic or the supernatural. Indeed, Buddha himself said there was no cosmic, there was no supernatural, that all processes were natural, and they could be divined by sufficiently intelligent, sufficiently well-prepared people that today we often call scientists. But some of the great revelations of human behavior don't come from scientists, it comes from the poets. This is Eshglor, the world's greatest Canadian wizard, spinning a little truth to you on this beautiful Wednesday.